Right, I'll be honest, this one kind of surprised me. Razer not only fixed the common complaints that came along with the DeathAdder design, they also took an ergonomic design, made it more ergonomic for more people. Is it worth that high price tag though? Maybe. Let's find out. So, the common DeathAdder is a venomous snake endemic to Australia. This snake is an ambush predator. Hey, can I help you? Oh, well, I'm just doing commentary on the DeathAdder. It's in the title of the video. I mean, yes, but it's for the Razer DeathAdder, the mouse, the gaming mouse for computers. Oh, well, that was a big misunderstanding. Kind of bummed. I had a bunch of real interesting facts to talk about too. Oh, well, okay, that sounds cool. How about just some quick ones though, because I gotta get back to my mouse review. Ah, sick mate. Okay, let's do it. Fact 1. The DeathAdder has the longest fangs out of all snakes in Australia. Looked at all the other Aussie snakes and said, those aren't fangs, these are fangs. Fact 2. It's also widely considered to have the fastest strike out of all snakes in Australia too. Considering everything there wants to kill you, it's no good. Lastly, the biggest threat to their existence is invasive cane toads. They eat baby DeathAdders and the adult adders eat toads and die because of the venom in the toads. It'd be kind of hilarious if it wasn't also kind of depressing. Okay, that's it. I'll let you get back to it, mate. See you later. All right, thanks, disembodied Australian voice. Anyway, the DeathAdder has seen a lot of re-releases over the years. It's one of their most prolific and long-standing designs. The most recent releases have been the DeathAdder V2 Pro, which is basically just a DeathAdder Ultimate, as well as the DeathAdder X Hyperspeed. So this new DeathAdder is kind of not a DeathAdder. I mean, it carries the name, but there's so many changes to the actual ergonomic shape and design of this mouse that you could almost argue it's really not a DeathAdder anymore, but I'm happy that it isn't. So really, there are two changes that they made that are really game-breaking with the DeathAdder V3 Pro. First off, they took the sides at the front and narrowed it down. Second, they actually increased the angle on the hump. Now, these changes do make it feel a lot more like Zowie's EC mice, but that's a good thing. First off, the change to the acute angle on the hump means that you actually have a more ergonomic angle to your wrist while you're holding the mouse. Second, by bringing in those front flares, my ring finger is no longer bumping up against my pinky. I used to really hate the DeathAdder because for such a big mouse, it felt super cramped. And part of that is because the flare was so aggressive at the front that it pushed my ring finger into my pinky finger, and it was just miserably uncomfortable to use. With that tighter front end, I also feel like it's a lot more precise, at least feeling. Coming from the V2 Pro, it no longer has the ability to charge on a dock. Doing so actually reduced some of the weight off of this mouse, which is partially how they got the weight so low. Thankfully, they changed the port to USB-C, and it lasts for 80 hours. And because there's no real LED lighting on this, that lifespan should be consistent for everyone regardless of your use. Now, it also removes the Bluetooth function from the V2 Pro, but this is really designed for gaming use. So a lot of the people that this is made for, it's really not going to affect very. It connects wirelessly using a 2.4 Hertz wireless dongle. Now, do take into consideration, this is compatible with Razer's 4K hyperpolling dongle extent, but that thing has been super hard to come by. For most people, going from 1K to 4K Hertz polling rate won't make too big a difference, but just something to consider. The coating on this mouse is very similar to the Viper V2 Pro, which in my opinion is my favorite texture of any mouse that I've tested so far. It's just grippy enough. It almost feels like a PBT keycap, but just a little bit smoother. It doesn't show fingerprints. This is just a fantastic feeling mouse. On top of that, the build quality on this is superb. No flexing, no creaking anywhere. For something that's so lightweight, this is built like a tank. Again, similar to the Viper V2 Pro, this is using their new Focus Pro sensor, which is a top-of-the-line sensor. Really the most competitive sensor available right now. Feels very good, very accurate. I don't have any issues with spin out. They say that this thing is very compatible with nearly any surface, even smooth, glossy glass. It can be used on that as well. So you can use this sensor on seriously anything, even if you've got a glass top desk. It's got those V3 Razer optical switches in mouse 1 and mouse 2. They do feel a little bit heavy. For me, I actually really like that. It gives it a really substantial feel to it, and it sounds very nice too. They also took a cue from Pulsar and raised the scroll wheel out of the shell a little bit. It's very easy to get access to. These steps are present. They're a little bit light for my taste, but not bad at all. It's a very, very good scroll wheel. It doesn't wobble very much. And the scroll click is really perfectly tensioned. It's not too light, not too heavy. You won't have any issues with the scroll click on this one. These side buttons as well feel excellent. They're nice and big, easy to access, very minimal pre and post travel, and they have a pleasant sound to them. These are really good side buttons. Now, for quite a while, I've preferred small to medium-sized mice. This is the first time that I've picked up a mouse that's fairly large and still felt just as accurate with this as I do with smaller mice like the Ponage Sim 2 and other mice along those lines. Now, this is just barely over 60 grams. For a mouse this big that is so well built, that's pretty crazy. If you're someone who's pursuing a low weight mouse, this is definitely up there. Not only that, the improvements to the overall shape for ergonomics make this super comfortable to use, as well as being super competitive. So if you're spending a lot of time at your desk or doing some stuff in the office, this is honestly a really good mouse even for that. But that does bring us down to the cost, which is at $150 US MSRP. It looks like the price on the DeathAdder has some pretty big fangs too. Now, I do understand why the cost may be so high. There's a lot of changes to the actual shape. They had to redesign the shell, bring in that front end, change the angle. So there's quite a bit they had to do to change the mouse. On top of that, there's also the very high quality components with the new sensor, the V3 optical switches. There's a lot that's going into this mouse that's gonna bring that cost up. And for those gamers that are looking specifically for every little edge they can get in the competitive scene, this really brings a lot to the table. So starting with this video, I'm gonna be introducing the Gecko grade. What's the Gecko grade? I just made it up. We're gonna look at 3 overall categories and come up with scores to rate how well it fits into that category. First is gaming. How well does this perform for gaming purposes? Second is everyday use. How good is this for just your day-to-day tasks, as well as more professional or productivity type tasks? And then there's cost. How much value are you getting for the cost that you have to put in to get this mouse? And from those 3, we'll average those out and get an overall score. For gaming use, this gets a very easy 10 out of 10. Very low switch latency with those optical switches, super accurate and snappy, new sensor, very, very low lightweight with shape modifications that make it better for a wider audience. Even people like me who don't generally like larger mice, I've been able to use this very, very well. So for everyday productivity use, I give this mouse a score of 8 out of 10. Now, it definitely exceeds because of that ergonomic shape. I could easily see using this all day at the desk if I'm doing video editing, other productivity stuff, web browsing. This is a super, super comfortable mouse. But compared to something like the DeathAdder X Hyperspeed, yes, the shape isn't as nice in my opinion, but you're missing out on 2 buttons on the top. Those are programmable buttons that you can use macros for whatever program you're using. And you're also missing out on Bluetooth, which is very nice if you have a multi-device setup. And if you wanted to take this mouse with you, there's no place for you to put that dongle. So if you wanted to take this with you, like throw it in your backpack, use it with your laptop or something, you have to put that dongle just loosely in your bag or in like a fanny pack or something, because there's no slot on the mouse to carry. So you can definitely use this for productivity tasks, but it's not really geared towards it. They put all of that focus into the gaming performance, and it shows. It exceeds in gaming performance. And when it comes to cost, it was a little bit more difficult, but I give this a 7 out of 10. Like I mentioned before, there's top quality components being put into this thing. It feels amazing in hand and it performs at the top of the game. So I do understand why it's expensive, but I do think they could probably get away with making it a little cheaper. $150 for a mouse is steep for a lot of people, but granted, this is made for those people who are looking for that top tier performance. So it's not a bad price, it's a very understandable price. So that brings the DeathAdder V3 Pro to an overall score of 8.3 out of 10. It's important to consider what your priorities are when you're looking for a mouse. It's important to consider why you're getting the mouse in the first place and what your priorities are. Are you looking for something because you want to do a lot of productivity tasks? Are you doing a lot of video editing? This isn't the one I would recommend for that if that's your primary goal. But if you're looking for something that is top tier, highest performance mouse for gaming, that's also kind of nice for productivity, this is definitely a good mouse to go with. If you like the features that the DeathAdder V3 Pro brings to the table, you may also like the Viper V2 Pro, which has almost identical types of features, but a flatter symmetrical shape. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. You guys take care, God bless, and I will see you on the next video. All right? Later.